I'd rather be fat than bald. And that was a quote from the sister-in-law of Josef Fritzl, Christine. And this is Jen.
This is Becky.
And this is Too Close to Home. And you guessed it, we're going to go on to part 3 of Josef Fritzl and his poor daughter Elizabeth in the basement.
Yay.
I'm like, well, that was really delightful starting. And then I was like, oh, I can't be all like excited.
Fun fact about bald, I get my little time hop notifications. And, it shows you all the stuff over the years. And the other day, my time hop notification was where when John was little, we were watching a commercial. And it was a Rogaine commercial, and he asked me to order it for him. And I was like, why? You have all your hair. And he said, because I don't want to look like those guys, so I need to start using it now.
He says, I'm thinking ahead, okay? Preventative.
I showed it to him, and I was like, maybe that's why you go through this. You went through this long hair era. You just really wanted to embrace it and love it as much as you
like,
can.
I got to love it while I got it. You know what I mean?
He was 8 at the time that he said that to me. So I guess he's got a little bit of my irrational fears. Anyway, thought that was a good time to bring that up.
We needed it, okay?
Men have a true fear and dislike of being bald from a young age. It is horrible for them.
I did watch a video the other day, and they were talking about like those fun thoughts that moms have, and the one lady's like, I have OCD. I don't have fun thoughts like that. Mm-mm. I have a thought that what if I stuck my hand into peanut butter and then I spread it on my infant son's face who I did not know had a peanut allergy. So no, we're not the same.
We're not the same.
So my sources, let me knock them out of the way. Secrets in the Cellar by John Glatt, Wikipedia, the Canadian legal system, The Scotsman, The Independent, Spiegel Story, The Telegraph UK, The Guardian, Spiegel International, Graphic News, BBC, Reuters, The Daily Mail, and Tidskrifta, which is the journal translated from German.
Tidskrifta?
Tidskrifta. So last time we talked about Elizabeth going into the cellar, her first 10 years of becoming a mother. And so today we're going to pick up in the 80s. Our decade.
Oh.
The decade that brought you Jen and Becky.
That's right.
So once 1985 hit, he began his saucy 60s with several overseas trips to Pattaya, if you recall. He loved the lady boys. He bought a new Mercedes, silver, and his signature color, and he was making friends in high places. He was well respected and highly regarded as a real estate developer, having bought more and more homes just to rent out. And that history of him being a sexual deviant just kept getting further and further in the past, and people who were local less and less remembered. So he looks less like a sexual deviant and more like, a
thriving real estate man.
Exactly. So when his crimes were uncovered by police, they would follow his financial trail and find that he had remortgaged the rental houses over and over and over again illegally, which is nothing new when think about his arson scams for insurance money. Motherfucker was never doing anything above board.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
Well, above anything
or
was
above ground.
Yeah, or above ground. Above was nothing in his tenant.
Not in his vocabulary.
Yeah. He would dress exquisitely and live far beyond his means, but was just ahead of the banks at the time being. So he was always 2 steps ahead of a foreclosure, 2 steps ahead of a bankruptcy. He had changed his Amstetten home. The first and second floors were going to be rented out, and the top and some of the second floor would be where his family would live. The tenants would later recall how odd it was that he seemed to go to the cellar daily and for hours at a time. One of them actually saw him take a wheelbarrow full of food down to the cellar and come up with nothing. He thought it was odd, but he was like, I'm going to mind my business. Sometimes you should not.
Sometimes you see something, you should say something.
See something, say something.
Different generation, different era, different country.
But
different
here's another
culture.
one. Like, if you heard knocks and sounds coming from a cellar.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm just making my ads go for my bonus coins. I'm sorry.
Gotta get those bonus coins, dog. Listen, I play my little old lady games. If you don't think that I'm not in there farming every day and making sure that my cows are fed, you're crazy.
I'm just letting the ads run while we podcast. It's called multitasking.
Exactly. You have to leave this in. They need to know the real us, Jimmy. They gotta love all of us. That includes our little old lady games where we have to play the ads so we can get the free corns, because I'll be damned if I'm paying $1.99 for it.
You're right about that.
So if you heard knocks and sounds from a cellar and then your landlord is like, oh, that's just like an old heater, what would you do?
Tricky question. You know, I'd like to say I would say something, but the other part of me would be like, I don't want to be in the cellar, so I'm gonna mind my business.
Yeah.
Really just depends on the vibe at the time. And honestly, to be completely honest, it depends on what I would think the police would do if I called them.
That's true, though. And then, you know, with it being Austria and everybody being like very much mind your business. Listen, apart from the sex dungeons, it does sound really attractive that so many people mind their fucking business there. I love everything about that.
I do too.
Leave me alone. I leave you alone. You fuck off. I'll fuck off. Thank
That's
you.
right. Exactly. I'm here for the vibe outside of the sex dungeon.
Yes, please don't include me on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll opt out. Where's the paper for that?
Exactly.
Another thing I think was odd was that Joseph Jr. also had a key to the basement, and he had been seen going down in there as well. Usually drunk, though, with the bottle in hand. He was the de facto handyman despite not really being handy at all. If you recall, he had some kind of disability. They never really specify it, but he stayed living with them. And it was not the kind and wonderful mother-son situation that you have with your Justy. It was, oh, he's my slave. You know, he can't do anything, but he'll be working for me.
Yeah,
Fucking
Justin
awful.
definitely does not work for me.
He
Wish I could put him
He
to
works
work.
for those animals, baby.
And you know, he tries to do stuff around the house, and maybe it's my own problem that it's like, thanks for cleaning, son. Let me go behind you and clean the bathroom one more time. He does try.
He does. He do. And he gives the pets hugs.
He does.
And all dogs love him.
Yes.
All animals love him.
And there's one thing, I will not live a day on this earth not feeling loved by that child.
For real.
Nobody else loves me. That baby will love me.
You will never go missing because Justin won't let you.
He damn sure
It's
won't.
the sweetest thing in the whole world.
It is.
I couldn't really find what happened to Joseph Jr., where he's at, or if he was involved at all. But considering the fact that he had a disability, it could be deemed that he was not able to deduce that what was happening. And Elizabeth didn't really talk about her brother at all. I'm sure she had seen him in there, or he had went in there and saw all that Elizabeth probably would have come up with a solution to get out.
Right. Or if he was able to, like you said, comprehend and understand, because who knows what the dad told him the situation actually was, or threatened him if he said anything.
Exactly. And this motherfucker did look evil and scary. I'm just saying.
I was not getting like positive vibes of what his appearance probably was. I haven't looked him up, but
you know how Fred Rogers is adorable and his eyebrows are just like real rounded out and happy? He's like hiling with his eyebrows, okay?
He wasn't like, you know how when you see Mr. Rogers, even if you didn't know what he did, he just has that sweet, loving, trusting appearance. I'm not feeling like that's what this guy was.
Not the vibe we're getting. That's not the vibe we caught.
You keep talking and see if I'm accurate. But as you know, what, Jennifer? I've never
known you to be wrong. Ever. It's just facts on facts on facts. So Joseph, it's Josef Fritzl.
Okay. I'm just going to take us back for one moment. You know, you asked what I would do if I saw him taking a wheelbarrow of food down and thought he had someone in a sex dungeon. After looking at him, I'm unfortunately going to have to say I probably would have minded my fucking business.
Because I'm not ending up in that dungeon, baby. That's not me, not today.
I probably would have moved.
You know what? I don't like this landlord. He has a key to my house, and I don't feel comfortable about this.
You might not agree with everything I say, but what I can promise you is it will be the truth. And
you know what? Becky's a survivor. I'm a survivor. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to stop. And she does work harder. You know what I mean?
I do.
So in 1985, she became pregnant again, but this time with twins, Alex and Michael, who'd be born in early 1986. This the year of our king, JJ.
Oh, it is.
As usual, Joseph would not attend the birth, but visit thereafter. And he would find what he would find shortly after being born was that baby Michael developed breathing problems, and that Elizabeth would be begging for help.
Wait a minute. All that fresh air down there, and the baby was having
all
breathing
that fresh
problems?
air, that great high quality air.
I am shocked and shook.
Shooketh. He denied her request to get any medical supplies whatsoever, or take him to get any medical attention, saying, "What will be, will be," which is something you say about a romance, not a life. Michael would live 3 horrible days before passing in his mother's arms. Callously, Joseph threw the body into the incinerator.
Oh.
At this point, Elizabeth had lost 2 children, had 2 children taken away, and had 2 in very ill health trapped with her. Her children were her own whole purpose for survival at this point. So to say his control over her was locked in was like an understatement. Knowing he had programmed her into submission, he relaxed some of his rigidity. He brought in a TV, some secondhand furniture, even a fish tank for the boys.
Oh.
Or for Felix, not Felix. Can't remember what the oldest one's name is. But anyways.
I don't really make callous of the light of the situation, but it feels very like Ghost. You know how the poor Ghost had nothing. And
they had nothing, and let me bring.
And then all of a
When
sudden
they brought the Alexa in,
they had the TVs and stuff.
Samantha!
But they were so happy, like the kids and shit. Like, imagine the shock.
Isaac is like me in my core. You know what I mean?
I named my baby dinosaur Isaac.
Exactly. That was I was doing little T-Rex arms. He would complete several more rooms, really rounding out that shower and kitchen in the dungeon, so there'd be a little bit more room. Every day became this sick routine. Despite leaving school at 15, Elizabeth would dedicate hours of the day to teaching her children math, history, with textbooks that Joseph had brought for them. She would speak about the world above, keeping her children enthralled. She would teach them games and help them decorate the gloomy space with their drawings. And you could see, there's not many photos of the basement, but some of the photos you can see where there's kids' drawings, like paint all over the place. And I'm like, it's so sad. This little bits of sunshine and all this doom.
I can look it up now, you know. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm just going to.
She'd even talk about her own childhood, but was very careful to keep the implications of their imprisonment a secret from the children. Seriously, the longer this horror persists, the more impressed I am with her as a mother. Her ability to take on all that pain and horror to limit whatever she could from harming them is just astounding. Joseph would come down to the cellar in a way that people would come home from work. He'd bring presents for the kids, playing this loving father. But the kids knew that, like, when Joseph came in, it was time to scamper off because he'd also have presents for Elizabeth. He had a VCR, and of course he'd bring hardcore porn and lingerie for the rapes, forcing her to wear it and watch the tapes and then reenact the scenes that he liked the best. He had a registered credit card in Elizabeth's name to order the lingerie, mail order. The packages would show up in her name for years, and yet somehow no one noticed or they chose to ignore it. Afterwards, she would, after the rape, like this is like very, as it never happened, she'd get up, she'd cook dinner, and he would sit with the children watching TV. They would settle down for the night, and the next morning he would go back upstairs to his other family as if it was him leaving for work again. Over time, the conditions grew worse as the children got older. Stefan, which is the oldest son, he grew to 5'9", but he would be permanently crippled because the basement was so low, he had to stay hunched over. He could never sit straight up completely. Their lack of sunlight, fresh air, quality food, and just overall life was killing them slowly. The condensation on the walls led to mold, which also led to fungal infections that were difficult to keep at bay, considering she only had aspirin to treat everything. Which also, not to make light of it, makes me think of Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the dad's like all about Windex. It's like got elbow and Windex. I bumped my elbow. I don't think it's going to solve everything, okay?
And Vicks vapor rub.
Yeah. Vicks vapor rub everywhere. Put it on the bottom of your feet.
Yes.
They would have trouble thinking from the lack of oxygen and would spend most of their time laying down. The sensory deprivation would cause issues with the children's coordination and balance. So basically, like I said, just laying down all the time. You sit up, you get dizzy, you lay down, you know? And then there was nothing to even look at anyway, so you fucking lay down. Having never seen anything but the cellar, the only way they could learn about the world was through books and television. And even then, when you've never experienced reality, how can you tell the truth from fiction?
Right.
Like, if you have never been outside your door, how do you not know you don't live in the world of Jetsons?
How do you know the world is round?
How do you not
flat? Unless you...
Although it would be cool to think that you did live in the time of the dinosaurs. You remember that TV show in the 90s that was the dinosaurs? And it had the little bit, I'm the baby, gotta love me.
Yes.
That would be Becky's dream. I'm
It
going to
would.
walk out. Sorry, guys. I have to do that to get through this. This is difficult. Imagine watching Days of Our Lives and thinking it's real, and then watching the news and thinking it's pretend. In their case, either way, it's more exciting than what they were living in. In August of 1997, Michael's twin Alexander was alive and 15 months old. I'm sure she waited on bated breath for the first year, expecting him to be taken away, but then not having to and relaxing the fact that she wouldn't have to lose another. That's a false hope, though, because Joseph did what he'd done twice before. He came down with a letter for her to write and then took the baby upstairs. When recalling the third child showing up, Joseph's sister-in-law, Christine, asked why he didn't keep looking for Elizabeth. He would say, what's the point? At this point...
So she can take care of these children.
I mean, feed these damn fucking children. Take care of them. Wipe their asses and shit. At this point, it was routine. So within a month, the foster parents would get another paycheck of $1,500 a month on top of the other two that they were getting. The lives of the children upstairs were a stark contrast to their siblings, both the ones downstairs and the first set of Joseph's children. They were loved and doted upon, well-mannered and lighthearted. They attended school and were above average students. They were taken to music lessons and were able to participate in group sports. All signs of a normal, well-adjusted childhood. They called Joseph and Rosemary Mama and Papa, and they enjoyed summers by their rooftop pool. Which I'm like, that's like why would you have a pool on the roof? I just feel like that would be sunburn central, but that's just a pale girl talking, you know what I mean? And if you're Austrian, I'm sure you're fucking pale like me. Sorry, that was just my own personal problem. His second to youngest daughter with Rosemary was Gabrielle, and she and her new husband lived with the Fritzls for 3 years. He stated he shared nightly drinks and casual conversation with his father-in-law and that everyone acted normal and nothing seemed wrong or out of place. To me, this shows how more docile he's kind of coming with his age. He's in his 60s. And according to research and psychological understanding, men generally tend to become less aggressive and more docile as they age, often exhibiting a greater emotional stability and maturity, leading to a calmer and less reactive demeanor compared to their younger selves. It's a huge contrast to the tight ship he ran with his first set of children, and more particularly the oldest 5. Despite being more docile at home, his libido is still growing strong. Okay. In 1998, a new miracle drug came into his life.
Oh, fuck.
Viagra. It came in handy when he was visiting his favorite cat house, the Villa Ostenda. Still stingy, but still a crazy deviant with sex workers, stating that he'd like to punch them or chain them up to the wall, all sorts of things that like he was doing with Elizabeth, but with women above ground. This meant that it was time for a month-long sex tourism trip to Pattaya, followed by 2 weeks in Italy. That's 2 months, right? 2 months that Elizabeth would at least have a reprieve.
Yeah.
So, of course, he started, stocking up all the supplies to feed his prisoners for that month and a half to 2 months. This required extra trips to surrounding towns to avoid suspicion, but it still drew curious eyes. A gas station attendant that had seen him for years recalled buying frequently and would sometimes have his wife with him. Attendants saw him and Rosemary putting food in the cellar for far more than they and the upstairs children could ever need. Which again begs the question, how much did Rosemary know? What if she didn't think Elizabeth was down there and she was just like, he's got somebody down there. I just don't want to be a part of it. There's just like so many freaking possibilities.
Yeah.
Weirdly, he had a special sentimental place for holidays and birthdays. His older children would come home along with other relatives, tempered and gotten along with the rest of them. Others, like his sister-in-law, Christine, hated his guts with good reason. He would degrade her sister in front of the whole family, making her the butt of every joke and continually reminding her that he wouldn't have sex with her because she was just too fat. Christine, my girl, she once spoke up and said, well, I'd rather be fat than bald, which sparked his trip to get a hair transplant. So fierce, honey, fierce. He would also tell crew jokes that he thought was hysterical despite making everyone uncomfortable in the room. Like, read the room, fans.
Read the room.
Later on, after the first celebration was over, he would join Elizabeth and the basement children to celebrate with them, bringing them cakes and presents. And so the time came for his trip to Thailand, and he would spend days on the beach sunning, swimming, enjoying boat rides, lunches by the sea. And then at night, he'd visit male and female Thai sex workers. He always explained that Rosemary couldn't come because she needed to watch the kids. Somebody's got to do it. Often his friends had taken videos and pictures, much to my displeasure, of his time frolicking on the beach. I don't recommend unless you like old white European deviants and zebra print Speedos. Because that is legit one of the photos.
10 out of 10 would not recommend.
There's like one where he's like laying on his belly and it's a little Thai woman giving him a massage and he's wearing the Speedo and he's just looking up all happy and you're like,
that's disgusting.
Gosh. They also caught him on camera buying lingerie for a much smaller woman than Rosemary. When he saw his friend filming, he lost his shit and later is like, listen, dude, I'm having an affair. Please don't tell Rosemary. It's a little secret. Just keep it on the DL. And his friend's like, I get you, dog. I got it. No worries. Well, while the sexagenarian was closing in on 65 years old, his ambition showed no signs of slowing down either. He would continue to buy and sell real estate, mostly doing shady shit like putting properties in Elizabeth's name. Why is no one looking? Why no one looking? There's so many things in her name, dude. I'm like, it's the Austrian government, so I don't know how they are, but I know if this was the American government, the IRS would have at least tried to audit her at once.
Yeah.
Like, where's his income, ma'am? I don't see any income being reported
and
here.
She would have had to been present to have her name put on there to sign some paperwork.
Being a well-known and somehow respected local, he of course had friends. One friend, who was also in his 60s, did speak of hanging out for a boys' night at a local swingers club when Fritzl gave him some sex advice. Men their age could have tons of fun with sex, but all you had to do was just take a Viagra, Levitra, and Cialis in that order to keep that dick rock hard all night long. Apparently, when one falls out, the other one kicks in. I guess it's a timing thing. I don't know. I don't want to find out.
Jimmy, is that the order you take them in?
Remember, if it's longer than 3 hours, you need to visit a hospital. Imagine his friend's surprise when he returns next week to see that Joseph brought his wife Rosemary with him. Now remember, he'd been telling everybody, he don't have sex with her. She too fat, she too ugly. So, according to this friend, he saw Joseph send Rosemary to a quiet corner while he hooked up with a young woman in the room in front of Rosemary and everybody else. Because it's a swingers club, that's what they do there.
Oh.
But
don't know. Haven't been.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming based off of this, because people are just fucking by a pool and shit, that, I guess that's what they do at swingers club. I don't know. But I hear Houston's here for it.
Interesting. Good to know.
I just man, sometimes when I think about Rosemary, it's hard. It would be hard if I was Elizabeth not to suspect her, but to see that kind of control that he could take her to a sex club after degrading her, then have sex with another woman in front of her around all these other people, and then just leaves with her afterwards. She doesn't participate whatsoever.
I mean, maybe she was good, better you climb on top of someone else than me.
Yeah. All I can think is maybe other people are maybe she's a cuck. Maybe that's her kink or something.
Right.
Meanwhile, he's back at home probably beating the brakes off of her. I don't know.
Ugh.
Despite the degradation, the year 2000 saw their 44th wedding anniversary with a party, keeping up an image of a happy and devoted wife and mother. Rosemary kept up the home, keeping it clean and beautiful, cooking big meals, always taking the children to all their extracurriculars. In fact, it was astounding to people who knew her how strong she was throughout it all, losing her daughter to a cult and having to raise her grandchildren in her 60s. She cared deeply for the welfare, and I somewhat believe she felt like this was a do-over as her first set of children had to scrape to get by, and she did not have the ability to do the things that she could do now.
Yeah.
He held all the money for his fucking fancy clothes and his trips back when his first set of children were born. Once a teacher heard the children referring to them as Mama and Papa, they brought it up to the school and explained they really needed to be honest with them, that they really weren't their parents, they were her grandparents, and where their mother had went and stuff. So she decided that she'd wait till summer, and she hired a child psychologist to help explain the situation to the children. She threw them a party to make them feel confident in their new family dynamic, and they would now be called Omi and Opie from here on out. Despite the things that she could give these children, that she was doing her best to raise them in a church and give them all the opportunities the first set never had, Joseph was still an evil son of a bitch who terrorized the children and was excessively domineering. He just got better at hiding it, and I'm sure Rosemary did it as well. Most terrifyingly, Lisa would turn 11 at this time and look just like a copy of her mother, Elizabeth, and his favor for Lisa was already apparent. She went to a private girls' school while the other two children went to a public school. In 2002, Elizabeth became pregnant for the 7th and final time. And she was in her mid-30s. Her teeth were falling out. Her once vibrant red hair had turned white and wiry. Her father had already announced that he was no longer attracted to her and decided that he would now move on to 13-year-old Kirsten. And he had begun to groom her to take over Elizabeth's position.
Jesus Christ.
Truly, it's frightening how these girls were basically all prey. They weren't his children. Despite calling her his wife, he treated the girls little better than a stray cat that got the mange. Frail and sickly, having spent her whole life underground, this is just unspeakable. I can't even fathom what this child went through. December 16th would be the birth of the last child, Felix. He would let Elizabeth know that this child will have to stay underground as Rosemary was just getting too old to raise children anymore. In the previous years, he had this ambitious project for an apartment building with shopping and an underground garage because this motherfucker just loves digging shit. It was poised to be built in downtown Amstetten, and he had mortgaged basically everything to get the loan to build. But the citizens of Amstetten said, no, that's not our style, dog. It's going to ruin the vibe of downtown. So with the project... Direct quote. You know, the Austrians, dog. With the project falling through and owing the banks over $1 million, he was nearing bankruptcy, which meant he also couldn't afford his two families, much less his extravagant lifestyle of crocskins to shoes and Italian suits. He turned to the tried and true scam of arson to dig himself out of the mess. In August, one of his apartments caught fire. When fire and rescue crews arrived, they found Joseph and Joseph Jr. battling the flames. The female tenant had escaped but was transported to the hospital for smoke inhalation. Within a few weeks, he claimed $15,000. Shortly after that, he would get a visit from the 5-0 where they suspected arson because the fire had been lit in 2 places, which is a hallmark of an intentional fire. This is despite the fact that there was another fire not long after this where he claimed another $5,000. Then apparently he had an electric meter fire adding up to a total of $20,000 given, no questions asked, which is very unlike insurance companies.
Very unlike.
Despite their brief investigation, no charges were filed and the seller somehow remained undiscovered. In April 2005, he turned 70. Rosemary threw him a huge party on the rooftop patio with all their family and friends, and he was officially retired.
Well, not all of them.
Some of them were underground. Officially retired, he began drawing his pension, and while he was still hopped up on all the dick pills on the market, he became less of a threat, so Elizabeth started to assert herself to get better conditions for her children. She never tried to escape as she thoroughly believed that the door was booby-trapped, and with her children, that wasn't something she wanted to risk, I'm sure. By this point, Elizabeth had begun to worry about the implications of incestuous reproduction long after health effects. You know, the things that would come evident as they went through puberty and got older. It's a reasonable thing to be worried about. Monica did end up having heart surgery at a young age due to a congenital defect, which might have been prevented had her father not been her grandfather. Here you have 3 children that have never once seen sunlight, breathed fresh air, or ate fresh food. They are malnourished, their development severely stunted, and most deeply deprived of stimulation other than what the TV and their mother could provide in the dark, dank dungeon. In 2006, Rosemary and Joseph reached their 50th!
Yay.
The town threw a huge party. Because again, he's a huge pillar of the town. Everybody thinks he's just this big real estate magnate, whatever that word is. They even invited the mayor, and the mayor would congratulate him and Rosemary on being such pillars of the community, raising not only their children, but their grandchildren. In late 2006, in Vienna, a young woman would be seen running through neighboring gardens in a street, jumping fences, and asking passerbys to call the police, but they paid her no attention. After about 5 minutes, she knocked on the window of a 71-year-old neighbor known as Inga, saying, "I am Natasha Kampusch." Natasha had been in an eerily similar situation as Elizabeth, and that they were held underground for years.
Oof.
Natasha had been abducted when she was 10 years old. A 12-year-old witness reported having seen her being dragged into a white minibus. Despite exhausting searches of minibuses and suspects in the area, the trail went cold with a speculation of a child pornography ring and illegal organ trading.
Jesus.
I'm going to win in Europe. The truth was that she was held in a 54 square foot prison by a man named Wolfgang Prekopos, where he would rape her and starve her to keep her too weak from escaping. She was 99 pounds at 10 years old when she was abducted, right? She was found at 18 years old. She was 106 pounds.
Eesh.
To give you perspective, a healthy adult BMI is roughly 18 to 25. Underweight is below 18 and severely underweight is below 16. She had a 14 when she was found, which is the same BMI that many Holocaust concentration camp survivors had at the time of their liberation in World War II.
Jesus.
He also made her his personal slave, cooking and cleaning for him. He used a tactic similar to Joseph's in that the windows and doors were all supposedly rigged to kill her if she tried to escape. But escape she did. Over the years, as she got older, he got more relaxed and began letting her out in the backyard at night, and then slowly began exposing her to the outside world again. Once, he even took her for a skiing trip, but regardless, the control he had over her at that point was so strong that she was so psychologically affected she couldn't mentally escape, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Until that day came where she was cleaning the very fan that she was abducted in. Wolfgang got a phone call, and so because she was vacuuming, he started walking away. She took the opportunity of the vacuum masking her noise and ran. Eventually, Wolfgang would be found after he had walked in front of a train.
Of course.
He had told Natasha that they would never catch him alive. It's a good thing she did it when she did it, because he had plans of getting false papers for them to live abroad with her as his Czech wife on paper. Despite him being a criminal, the years of torture and mental abuse and rape did affect her so deeply that she did cry when she found out that he had died.
Oh, yeah.
People speculated that she had Stockholm Syndrome, which she has rejected. She feels that people use this term about her are disrespectful of her and do not allow her the right to describe and analyze this complex relationship that she had with her kidnapper in her own words. In fact, the home that she was imprisoned in is now owned by her. She claims it's due to it being a large part of her youth, and that she never wants it to become a macabre museum where people can see where she lost her innocence. She eventually filled the basement space that served as a prison with concrete in 2011, and to me that feels very cathartic. She kind of took her time to process through this. She went on to write books and do interviews, which is the exact opposite of what Elizabeth did. So let's continue on with Elizabeth's story. It's like all happening
Parallel.
concurrently at the same time. Now, by 72, Joseph had begun to decline from all the years of juggling families, the scams, all the rapes, all the sex trips. And like
Bless his heart.
I mean, it's really hard.
It is.
And like many old senile people without a job, he got paranoid, watching for any hint that his secret was out. He actually debated on killing them, but stated that he was getting older and didn't think the incinerator that he threw baby Michael in would handle that many bodies. To me, I think he just said that to say that. Because what would stop you from not just shutting that door and then dying in there?
Yeah.
Nobody would have known. So don't sit there and say that, sir, come on. He knew that it was a matter of time before his age would make this arrangement impossible. In the winter 2007, the health of children in Elizabeth was so awful. They were severely immunocompromised and ill with what appeared to be the flu. Kirsten was extremely weak and her teeth began to fall out. She began to have heart problems and then would have these weird screaming fits. Kind of like she'd lose her mind. Felix would have high fevers along with Kirsten, and they would be shaking from the chills. The over-the-counter drugs and aspirin that he had brought them did nothing.
What?
Yeah. Shocking, right?
Yes.
That's cutting edge over-the-counter medicine.
He should have took healing crystals down there. That was his first
That's
mistake.
totally... You know what? I heard quartz. It's very healing. But I digress.
I just make these jokes to make
You have to. You have to. It gets too serious. We just talked about an 11-year-old being abducted. Ugh. He decided that he needed to find a way, finally, to bring Elizabeth and the children above ground. Like, fuck it. This is it. I give up. He decided to go with the tried and true cult story, but this time she would write a letter describing her tiring of the cult and wanting to return home with her children. It talked about their medical problems and said it'd be about 6 months that she would be home. He timed it in a way that the letter would come at Christmas, a bit of Christmas surprise for Rosemary. You know what I mean? He did love a
Sweet.
holiday. He did love giving
Sweet.
presents. So once he announced it to the family that Christmas, he began announcing to everyone else that she was over the cult and she wanted to return home, all that, yada, yada. They wouldn't make it to 6 months because in April, Kirsten took a grave turn. She was suffering from a lung infection, seizures, and would pull the hair out of her head during her mental breakdowns. She would take off all her clothes, and at one point she took them and shoved them into the toilet to stop it up. And all her mother had was aspirin. And all she could do was watch her child disintegrate in front of her eyes, basically.
Mm.
When Joseph came down the evening of Elizabeth's 46th birthday, he found the dire situation with Elizabeth, begging him to take her to the hospital. Knowing she wouldn't survive, he said he would take Kirsten, but she'd have to wait for Friday because Rosemary was going to be going to Italy on her annual trip, so we needed to avoid suspicion. You just going to have to wait. Don't die yet. Fuck! That very day when Rosemary left, Kirsten would go into convulsions and pass out. So he re-strategized and decided to have her write a note to the doctor saying she was ill, take care of her, basically the same situation that he had done with the babies, and leave her on his front doorstep. Once she finished writing, he had Elizabeth help him take Kirsten upstairs out of the cellar, and on April 19th, in the early morning, she'd get her first breath of fresh air in 24 years, and Kirsten's first time out of a 590 square foot dungeon since her birth. He would quickly relock Elizabeth back up and then go inside and call emergency services to report a strange girl passed out on his steps. I like not even fucking opening the door. Y'all, I looked out my window. She's strange. Who does that? 3 hours after she was taken in an ambulance, Joseph finally decided to go in his silver Mercedes to the hospital. He walked directly to the ER and demanded to speak to the doctors as he had vital information on the girl who happened to be his granddaughter and not a stranger like he thought. He gave the doctor a note saying that he had found it in her pocket and the whole cult spiel and how she had dropped children on his doorstep before, so please don't go to the police. Here's the problem. Already, there's a weird girl on your front step, but somehow you have a note that was in her pocket.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
I'm sure he felt his heart fall out of his asshole when the police turned up on his doorstep the next day.
Yeah. Since, medical personnel were mandated reporters.
He stayed calm and gave them her dedicated Christmas letter to help sway them from suspecting him. On April 21st, he received a call from Kirsten's doctor, Dr. Reitler, stating that he needed to speak with Elizabeth, that Kirsten had taken a grave turn and may die soon. He responded that he had no clue where she was or what religious sect she belonged to, and that she had been gone some 20 years and they had never been able to find her. Regardless, he pressed Joseph that Kirsten was in a medically induced coma with her organs shutting down. In a cold manner, he said he had to go, and he hung up on the doctor. Reitler and the police would turn to the news to broadcast the story on Elizabeth and appealing for any information on her whereabouts for the sake of Kirsten. All while this is happening, Rosemary was enjoying her Italian vacation. Joseph, probably feeling cornered now because it's on the news, he called her and was like, "You better come home." Elizabeth's daughter showed up on the doorstep, and Elizabeth had abandoned them and that she's sick and all that. And of course, once the information got to the news, they went right to the Fritzl residence. If they were expecting him to give a fuck about it, they were sadly mistaken. He threw them off his property and called Dr. Reitler to cuss him out for causing so much trouble. Like, how dare you?
How dare
the
you?
audacity to try to save my granddaughter.
Disgusting.
Eventually, the police came back around, and this time they asked for DNA samples from the entire family. The children, Rosemary, and Joseph. While the rest provided their DNA, he said he was too busy and hopefully avoid being outed as Kirsten's father, because that was going to be very evident. By day 6, Elizabeth and the children had anxiously waited for updates, though Joseph would only volunteer that she was recovering. One evening, though, while watching the news, as usual, there was because there was little or no excitement in the judgment. What else are you going to do?
Right.
A picture of Kirsten appeared on the news, with Dr. Reitler begging for any and all information to lead to the mother of Kirsten, that they needed her medical history to hopefully save her life. The next time Joseph returned to the dungeon, Elizabeth immediately begged to go to Kirsten in hopes that she could save her life. She promised to return to the cellar promptly after the visit. The next morning, he made the decision. It was time to release them all, but with certain conditions. They would all have to maintain the charade that they had truly been living in the cult for 24 years, that she most definitely dropped Lisa, Monica, and Alexander on the doorstep, abandoning them.
I'm back. Sure. I got you, fam.
Say less. That's exactly what happened, dog. She would have to also make sure that Felix and Stefan were straight on their fucking story.
Got it. We're good.
That this man that had been their daddy the whole time was their grandpapa. I mean, having maintained as much of the illusion of not being prisoners to being told that they were prisoners their entire lives, that's an extreme revelation to swallow, much less for a teen and a 6-year-old child. Like, that whole time that you guys were down there and you didn't think McDonald's was real? It is. It's real.
God, could you imagine the first time you get French fries?
My mouth would melt. It was like,
yeah, one of the best inventions in the world, French fries and salt.
Later that morning, after the upstairs family left for the day, they go to school and all, he would bring Stefan, Felix, and their mother Elizabeth into the sunlight. And he would place them in the living room where Rosemary would return to find strangers. Once they realized who they were, Elizabeth and Rosemary embraced in tears for the first time in 24 years. That evening, Joseph called Dr. Reitler and said that, Elizabeth would return home and they'd be bringing her up to the hospital shortly. But to please, don't call the police because this will embarrass my family.
Son, I don't give a fuck.
Which, I mean, if my child disappeared for a quarter of a fucking century and came home looking like Elizabeth did, I would want the police, Interpol, and any and all law enforcement to bring that fucking cult to justice.
Who you telling?
So Dr. Reitler did speak to Elizabeth in person, giving all the details he could, despite leaving out the fact that they had been subterranean all her children's lives. Once they finished speaking and she left, Dr. Reitler called the police immediately. And of course, they brought them right in.
Of course.
At the police station, they treated Elizabeth with suspicion because they were under the understanding that she was in a cult and had neglected her kids. And so they assumed, by their appearances, that this is really what's going on. And after some time of refusing to speak, the police would finally get her to let down her guard enough with the promise that her and her children would never have to see or be harmed by Joseph again.
And this is probably one of the rare times that when you offer them a soda, it's going to work to get them to talk.
Well, yeah. She finally told the secret Joseph had guarded for 24 years, that they were captives, that her children were the product of numerous incestuous rapes. She had never abandoned her children, but had them taken from her. The harrowing story would spill from Elizabeth for the next 2 hours, only stopping to compose herself so she could continue. In that 2 hours, they'd fill 8 pages with what she had experienced over the last 2 decades. She spoke of her first rape at 11 and how he had done it for years prior to the imprisonment, and that he would rape her with such confidence of not getting caught. He had done it on walks in the woods, in his Mercedes, and other spots that are pretty brazen. He would trap her by asking her to move a door and trapping her as his sex slave for the next 24 years. She told of falling pregnant 4 years in, thinking it was her chance that she would be taken out for an abortion, or something that he sneered at, that she wouldn't be getting away so quickly from him. And it would be only the beginning of the many, many of pregnancies by her father. How she delivered by herself, losing baby Michael after his birth, and Joseph throwing him in the incinerator. And that he acted alone and that she didn't think her mother knew anything of it. Now came the time for Joseph. At first he refused to speak, but eventually he would confess to building the dungeon, but his version of events were quite different from Elizabeth's, if you can imagine. He said he did not rape her till after she was in the dungeon, when she was a legal consenting adult. And that it wasn't rape because he didn't have to force her at all. Joseph stated that he had done it for her own good, as she had a troubled childhood, being a black sheep and all. And he would speak of the device that he had rigged to release Elizabeth should something had happened to him, despite there never being any evidence of a device of that caliber ever happening in the dungeon. Joseph had no remorse whatsoever, stating that he cared for them and loved them. Why should he be sorry? That's serious. He said, why should I be sorry? What the fuck? Sir, you should be under the ground in your own dungeon.
That's what I was about to say.
Being raped by your own monster. After signing the confession and submitting a DNA sample, he would be taken into custody for incest and false imprisonment. The police noted that it appeared that Joseph truly didn't think he had done anything wrong at all.
Oh, I believe it. I believe he doesn't think he did.
Now came for time for Stefan and Felix to be examined by doctors to see their health status and to be interviewed by police. Remember, their entire lives, they'd only seen the babies that went upstairs, each other, their mother, and Joseph. So the police and Rosemary and the doctors were the first people they would ever see in the real life, which had to be so fucking alien to them.
Oh, God. And so, saying alien is exactly that. It would feel like you were abducted by aliens. Yeah. Could you imagine going into a hospital and then all of a sudden having them do all this stuff on you and take blood and put an IV and give you medicines and all this, and you have never fucking seen this before?
Never.
It's just wild. It's unfathomable. You can't even imagine. I mean, you can try to imagine, but no idea.
Exactly. They were pale, they were weak, and authorities noted that despite having never attended school, they were quite smart and they were very polite. They did have speech problems, which is due to the medical issues of being underground their whole lives. Felix and Stefan had their own language of grunts and sounds they would speak in, but would try very hard to enunciate and make it where the officials could understand them. The officers were quite moved and doted on the children, really. Everything and anything they would come in contact with would be a first. The only thing they had known of the outside world came from their television. Not in any way is this the same, but it makes me think of watching the Travel Channel as a kid, dreaming of seeing these far-off places, and then as an adult seeing them with such awe and wonder in person. I couldn't imagine if every movement, everything I saw would be quite like that, and how that would be immensely overwhelming quite quickly.
Oh, yeah. I think it the only thing I can compare it to, and it's kind of silly, but I'm Disney obsessed. And the first time I went to Disney, looking around, I was like, this is so magical. It doesn't even look real. It's like I'm in a movie, and just being so awestruck.
Yes.
That's how they felt just going outside. Very
much. I mean, they were talking about when they went in the elevator for the first time, fucking Felix was terrified because you could feel the elevator lift, Felix saw the moon for the first time, screamed with happiness, and he asked if it was God or if they were in heaven, and that breaks my heart.
Oh, God, yeah. They literally gave me chills when you just said that.
Even the car ride was a wild adventure, having never been in one. The driver, of course, went slowly because he knew this would be an extreme experience because they've been in a hole their whole lives. And that's where we're going to pick up next time, because despite him being caught, the torture doesn't really end for these children.
Oh, of course.
It doesn't end for Elizabeth. So it's going to be wonderful to talk about, guys. You excited?
Yeah, I can't wait. It's a good place to stop because it's a bit overwhelming.
It is. And next time will definitely be the end of this saga. So,
yay.
All right. Well, find us on our socials. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok's back. I hear. Check out our merch. Let us know your own Too Close Home stories. If you were in a dungeon for 24 years, let me know about it. Are you in a dungeon? I'll call 911 for you.
They probably wouldn't be able to let us know.
I'm here for you.
I am.
Thoughts and prayers. I don't know what to say.
I don't either. I'm so disturbed.
Don't forget to rate and subscribe on all our platforms.
I don't know what to say. So, on the note, rate and subscribe.
And until next time.
Stay safe.
Keep your head on a swivel.
And don't bring it so close to home that you're locked in a dungeon in your basement for 24 years. You do that to somebody.
Bye. If you enjoyed this episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on most platforms. Follow us on our social media at Too Close Home Pod on Facebook, at Too Close Podcast on Instagram, or if you have your own Too Close to Home experience, shoot us your story at tooclosetohome@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.